Happiness and Alexis Jordan here on Gaydio, the beat of Gay UK. It is the exchange, and we've gone up to all sorts of shenanigans tonight, including the fact that the lovely Simon here has been talking the odd word of Polari or two. Go on, throw one at us now.
Oh, boner, how bold.
There we go. Now, why are we talking Polari? Well, a leading Church of England theological college have had to apologise after they offended Christians with a service held in the gay language of Polari. The event, as part of LGBT History Month, which took place at Westcott House in Cambridge, was described as an attempt at queering the liturgy of evening prayer. Prayers said at the event referred to God as the Duchess. Psalm 19 was also reworded to refer to "O Duchess, my butchness," and one prayer referred to the Fantabulosa Fairy. The Reverend Canon Chris Chivers, the principal at the college, called the service
hugely regrettable.
Marvellous. Now, the source that they used for the Bible translation was the Polari Bible, a work of art created by the Manchester Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and, in particular, Sister Matic Debauchery, who joins us on the exchange tonight. Good evening, Sister.
Good evening, Paul.
So, tell us, Sister, why did you even consider translating the Bible?
Well, the sisters have used Polari in our ceremonies for donkey's years. A, because it's an important part of queer history, but also because it has this tremendous camp sensibility and is hilariously funny. And the exercise of translating into the Bible really came out of a conversation I had with one of the other sisters, Sister Martini, back in 2003. We were having a sherry in the convent on Florizel Street, and we got to discussing Polari and saying, well, it should be possible to translate via computer. And being of that sort of mind, I went and wrote some software that went ahead and did it. So the reason for the Bible, well, it's a large, well-known text in the public domain, but also it seemed ripe for conversion to Polari, and so it was done more as an exercise in sort of linguistics than anything else.
Certainly, though, that this translation or part of the Bible, the translation bits that they used, has really hit the press all over. It's in the Times, the Guardian, the Independent, the BBC News website. It's everywhere, and the Manchester Sisters and you are getting quite a lot of publicity. How does it feel to be rammed into the spotlight?
Well, the odd thing was it was all very sudden. At the convent, we have one of the nuns deals with the media, Sister Bang Bang, and she sent me a message on Friday evening saying, "Have you seen this in the Guardian?" And I thought, oh, that's odd, and went to bed really without thinking any more about it. Got up on Saturday morning, was reading the Times, and on Radio 4 in the background of the Today programme, sort of mentioned the Polari Bible. Then I saw it mentioned in the Times, and it just all this publicity suddenly, instantly from nowhere. Nobody was expecting this. We'd said for years that what we hoped was some trendy vicar would use the Polari Bible without realising what it was about. And sure enough, if he exists, or she exists, the Duchess Gloria has chosen to see that wish come true.
It's a language, isn't it, that goes back many, many, many years.
It's a slang. It's existed actually for centuries. It's originally a thing called a thieves' cant, and it was a secret language used by gay men up until the sort of 1960s and the 70s, largely to conceal meaning from an outsider. So it would be possible for two gay men back in the days when being gay was a criminal offence to have a conversation about whatever without anybody being able to understand what they were saying.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, gosh. How bona to vada your dolly old eek.
That's the one I used before.
Which is how bona, nice, to vada, to see, your dolly, your little old eek face.
Oh, how lovely, Mr. Owen.
Yes, indeed. Order allow your uppers on the stool as bona, ducky.
Well, Simon, you've got a question, haven't you, for Sister Matic?
He must be stood there in very strong lallies. When I hear Polari, it always reminds me of Kenneth Williams from Round the Horn and so on.
Indeed, yeah.
And it was terribly subvertive at the time because nobody knew what they were saying. But I'm sure there has to be a sense of humour to this. I'm sure it wasn't ever it wasn't ever intended to offend anyone, would it?
Well, Round the Horn it popularised Polari immensely. So for the younger listeners, Round the Horn was a radio programme on in the 1960s and 70s, and it remains one of the funniest bits of radio ever written. And there were two outrageously camp characters called Julian and Sandy, played by Hugh Paddock and Kenneth Williams,
yes,
who spoke in Polari. And it was this sort of strange thing because it was wonderfully innuendo-ridden. And up and down the country, all sorts of people. It's almost like they were sort of... They felt they were getting in on this secret language, sort of understood bits. But actually, if you understand Polari and look at some of the stuff in Round the Horn, it's actually absolutely filthy. Some of the stuff that they say, and nobody realised.
Yeah.
And there's a thing about the Director General of the BBC received a complaint from somebody about Round the Horn, saying that the people who were doing it put emphasis on certain words, and he replied that putting emphasis on certain words is described as acting. And so I think that the Director General and the management of the BBC were in on the joke and were just sort of pretending to be a bit innocent. But yeah, Julian and Sandy popularised it tremendously, and had it not been for Round the Horn, I think it will probably have died out.
So what do you reckon then, Sister Matic, to these outrageous comments made by other members of the church? You know, like the Reverend Canon Chris Chivers, the principal at the college, called the service
Hugely regrettable.
Yeah, I was seeing some of the comments by various people, both in the church and also on some of the sort of Christian websites, about how this is terrible and it's disgraceful. No, it isn't. I mean, frankly, get over yourself, Princess. Camping the liturgy up a bit is just fun, you know. Systematic child abuse by the church, etc., is an outrage. But you know, this basically using language like this to make the liturgy more accessible, whatever, is harmless. And I think that, you know, the church really ought to stop this homophobic navel gazing. You know, it was certainly never our intention to offend or whatever, and you know, this has been picked up, but the overreaction by the church and various religious people has been something to behold. In fact, it's interesting that the issue seems to have polarised opinion. So there's the religious people, many of whom are sort of quite offended by this, and then there's everybody else who just said, "Oh, get over yourself, cupcake." Yeah. And you know, so really, I'm not going to lose a huge amount of sleep over opinions on this. It will be interesting to see what the reaction is once we produce the Polari Quran.
That's certainly one way of trying to get things in through the back door. If you know what I mean. You're coping very well with having all this publicity thrust on you. Do you cope well with things being thrust on you?
Yeah, indeed, yes. Yes, I'm notoriously open, yes.
So, Sister Matic, thank you so much for joining us on the exchange here on Gaydio. What are the sisters up to at the moment?
Well, we're up to all sorts. I mean, again, I don't know how much your listeners know about the sisters. So we're this sort of rather eccentric and in your face end of sort of activism and theatre, and we screech around doing all sorts of fundraising and activism and education and community work, mostly in the LGBT community, mostly in the village, but outside it as well. The house is actually more active than it's been for a number of years. We've had several very strong new recruits joined us lately, and we're out and about in the village on a regular basis. So if any of your listeners see us out and about, rattling buckets or shaking tambourines or whatever, come on over and have a word.
Have you got a website?
Yes, well, there are two websites which may be of interest. First of all, the sisters have their own. The Manchester Sisters have their own website, which is the manchestersisters.org. And the Polari Bible has a website, polaribible.org.
Sister Matic, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good night. Take care, gentlemen.